Good evening. That was really good. Thank you for coming tonight. I think this is going to be an interesting conversation from Floozie to faith. And I want to thank Diane and George for the wonderful food tonight. And I also want to thank Diane for managing and coordinating this whole program for the community meal. And we are looking for more people who might be willing to contribute their food for this and their talents for this. And if so, go talk to Diane, because we want to have a full slate so nobody has to do it more than, say, once a month or so. So let's take a moment to center ourselves in prayer before we get into this interesting conversation. And we take a deep breath and let it go, allowing the outside world to drop away for this hour so that we can go in within and listen with our hearts to the amazing stories that anybody brings to us tonight, because that is why we come. We come to learn, we come to teach, we come to expand our consciousness. We come to learn how to be the very best person we can be in any one moment. And we are just so very grateful for the opportunity to come together. We're grateful for the people who come and share their stories. We're grateful for everyone just to be here and being together. And so it is. Amen. So I invited Rosie Powidzki tonight. She is a fourth-generation Sacramento County native. She completed a clinical pastoral education program at UCD. She spent several years as with the American Red Cross Disaster Service here in Sacramento. She was an active member of the Arden Christian Church, which is the Disciples of Christ, for quite a while. She's been an SLC chaplain for a year, and I didn't find out how long she's been at SLC, so we'll talk about that. And then she is also an part of the honorary officials of Old Sac, which is where the whole Floozie thing comes from, and we're just going to let her tell us about that when we get there. So, Rosie, please join me. Would you? Yeah, microphones are good.
Try that one again. Hi, y'all. Hi. It's good to see ya.
Okay, so Rosie, hi.
Hello.
Hi. So let's go back to the beginning. You said that you grew up in the Disciples of Christ, right?
I did.
So you grew up in a very, was it conservative Christian environment?
Oh, yes. And it was from the time I was 6 months old. I grew up in a church that was on, Freeport and Fifth Avenue, and arsonists burned it down, and now it's the subway. So every time I drive down the street, I cry. And when they were demolishing the church, they kept bumping into this concrete thing. They couldn't figure out what it was. And they thought, why in the world would a church have a spa? They were bumping into the baptistry. Yeah.
Yeah, the baptismal font.
Yes, only this is a big thing that they kind of throw you in and hope you don't drown on the way up.
So how long were you in that church?
I was in that church from the time I was 6 months old, and my mama used to make the Wednesday night suppers, and I would sit on the drain board from 6 months old on. So to this day, I'll sit on the drain board whenever I get the chance.
So at some point, though, growing up through all of that, was there a point where you kind of started to drift away from it a little bit?
Well, when I turned 20, I was 20 once, I decided I was going to smoke, drink, dance, and dye my hair.
Floozie!
And to this day, I drink, dance, and dye my hair.
Okay, so was this about turning your back on your religion? Was it about finding yourself, or was it about finding balance?
It was a couple of things. It was about finding myself, and farther on that, I wanted to be. Nobody believes this. I used to be incredibly shy, and they go, sure. But I was. So I started to kind of want to come out of myself and be, when I was growing up, I was known as, my middle name is Ann. So I was known as the Little Roseanne. I wanted to be my person. I wanted to be Rose. I wanted to be Rosie. I wanted to be who I wanted to be and not in some little box. I managed to squirm out of that box. But what happened was I had the opportunity to become a student of pastoral education, which is becoming a chaplain at UC Davis. And by that time, I had developed my Rosie persona, not quite the flamboyant, whoa, but I
You were
was
coming into yourself.
coming into myself. And I had long hair, and at that point I was very slim, wore jumpsuits, and every jumpsuit I had a bow that matched that I wore to work. And I was not your standard holy, prayerful chaplain, because I relate on a one-to-one basis. It's how are you doing today? How are the kids? Because they needed a distraction, I felt, from how ill they were. And when I would bounce into the room, they would just kind of light up and go, how are you today? How are the kids? This is how my kids are doing. And the head chaplain, his name was Dr. Reverend Tim Little, blind, wonderful man, took a deep breath and looked at me and went, you make me tired.
Did you say thank you?
I did. I said, okay, Tim. And I put on the black suit, carried the Bible, wore pearls, walked into the intensive care to my favorite patient, and her eyes got big, and she looked at me. And I didn't know what was going on, so we talked. And when I left, her husband came after me and said, you just scared the life out of Pat. And I said, what did I do? He said, she thinks she's dying because you're not you anymore. I walked back into the office and I said, Tim, you're going to have to deal with me. And I did it for 10 years. And what was interesting about that, working in the hospital made me lose my faith. For a time, I lost my faith.
And how did that come about?
How could there be God when there was such awful things happening? Why was there someone that had beaten their child to a pulp and God didn't stop it? Why didn't God stop the one-way driver that totally wiped out families? Why wasn't God paying attention? Because I was always taught God holds you in the palm of his hand. And then please tell me why he would either do this or just crush it. It took me a long, long time to walk away from that.
Because you had grown up in the external God, right? The
God did no wrong. God handled everything. It was God's will. Well, I didn't like what God willed. I'm sorry. So, and I have a beautiful daughter. I don't know if y'all know her, but her name is Kat. And I was working in the intensive care unit, and they called me one day because we were on call for a week at a time, 24/7. I got a call that said, you need to come to the emergency room. I see you right now. I made it from my house, which is a mile and a half over there, to UC Davis in 15 minutes. Upstairs. And in a hospital bed, there was a beautiful young girl. She had been beautiful. She was my daughter's age. She had been on the back of a motorcycle with her boyfriend, and they had gone off the road into a foreign land that was just covered in barbed wire. And she wasn't going to make it. They were going to harvest her organs, which was wonderful. The bed was just a mass of people, and Mom was at the head of the bed, and I was at the foot. I couldn't get to her. So being who I am, I winked at her, and I waved, and I gave her an air hug. And when the room had cleared, and she had been taken to the operating room, her mother hugged me and said, "That's the most beautiful, wonderful thing anyone could have ever done for me." I knew we cared. I knew we connected. But that was also a double-edged sword because I saw my daughter there. And the next time they called me, I couldn't go. My heart was so crushed and my faith so gone that I couldn't go back.
So did you resign? Did you walk away from that?
I walked away, I resigned, and I went back to the Disciples' Faith. And over here on Las Cruces and Eastern, there's a beautiful church called Arden Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. My kids needed to be in Sunday school because I had been brought up in Sunday school. So we went back.
Wait a minute. So you've lost your faith, but you're still going to bring your kids up in it, which is, very cool. But that's really interesting.
I'm still bringing my kids up in the faith because they needed to make their own choices. But I just had to find it again. And so I was there for quite some time. I was up different times. The board chair, I almost had a heart attack. The board chair, chairman of the elders, chairman of the worship committee, and with my fingers in any other pie that they decided Rosie needed to help with. And that was great. But you can only do that so long. And my sister-in-law and my sister and brother-in-law started the church. So I was there when they broke ground. And in January, they closed the church. The congregation had dwindled from 400 people to 20. You can't keep a facility open with 20 people. I don't care how hard you work, how much you pray, how many events you put on. It doesn't happen, particularly when the congregation was absolutely the most marvelous people in the world, but there were only 5 people there under the age of 70. Mainline churches are disappearing. People don't want to go to church anymore. And I was lucky to find SLC.
How did you find SLC?
My big teddy bear, wonderful, amazing friend, Thomas Hushen Fisher. Thomas, and Reverend Deb said I'd worked at Red Cross, which I did. And that's where I met Thomas. He worked in the health and safety department, and I worked in the disaster department. Well, y'all know Thomas. He has a big personality, and I have a mediocre personality. And we absolutely hit it off. He's amazing. He's my teddy bear. He's my anchor when I want to just scream. And he said, you need to come to SLC. Okay. So I did. And I walked in the door and I looked around at all the people. There wasn't a stuffy person in sight. Y'all are amazing. You're so full of joy and love and acceptance. I mean, who else could get by with this? You know. And on top of that, become a chaplain. But being a chaplain and being a person doesn't mean you have to be stuffy. I couldn't do stuffy anymore if I tried. And I've discovered that it's okay to cuss. Just not too much. But you have to be human.
Absolutely, absolutely. So during this whole process, where did you start, or have you regained your faith? Where did you start? Where did it start to rebuild? How did you bring yourself back?
My faith started to rebuild when I walked in the door.
Here.
So it was here. Even after being so involved at Arden, the faith was still wishy-washy because from time to time I did not always agree with the pastor and the chairman of the elders when it wasn't me.
Being on any kind of board, being in the background, the back part of a church is not the...
Boo, 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 no. Yeah. No, do not do that. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I know we need board members, but that's not my cup of tea. But I found it here because you're so welcoming. And my daughter and I came to, we've been in and out, but we came to a drumming circle back when we had drumming circles. And my daughter and I looked at each other and she said, Mama, we found our tribe again. And we did. And I dearly love all of you. And I fondly refer to this as the most wonderful hippie church with the most magnificent music I have ever heard.
Okay, so the drumming circles were before we shut down for the pandemic. So how long have you been coming to SLC?
Off and on since before the pandemic.
Okay.
I went back to Arden for a while, and then it just got overwhelming. And I was looking again, and I remembered SLC and how magical it is. And I just sat in the back for a while. and listened and learned. And then, as much as I tried to stuff down the personality, came right back out. So now a lot of people know who Rosie is, and they know the real Rosie. The little girl that's tight and afraid doesn't come out much anymore. On occasion she will. But you, each and every one of you, particularly Reverend Deb, have made that little girl comfortable and not afraid anymore.
Well, I'm glad that you were comfortable and not afraid anymore. And so do you feel like the faith, okay, could we say that when you lose your faith, you lose your trust?
Right.
So did that trust just start to build? Was it gradual? Obviously, you weren't just going to. You liked us, but you still probably weren't liking God very much at the moment. And so, did it just start to translate in? Okay. And then, of course, the way we talk about the inner Christ, the inner God, as opposed to the Santa Claus God or the emergency God, the external God. Mm-hmm. So how was that shift for you, going from an external God to an internal God?
It's been gradual, because for so many years it was an external God, and now the spirituality and mysticism comes in, and you don't have to. Every word in the Bible did not come from the mouth of God. I don't know if you knew that or not.
We've heard rumors.
Because there have been so many translations. But God, Spirit, is everywhere. It just swirls everywhere. And when it's kind of like Cupid. When it finds you, you're found. And you're okay. And it's okay to be sad. It's okay not to be able to communicate what you really want to say. And it's okay to just sit in the courtyard and listen for the whisper. And the whisper can come in the middle of a huge crowd, or it can come in the silence. But when I usually pray with people, I remind them that Spirit is always around you and with you, in your heart and on your shoulder, just listening to what you're whispering and giving you an answer if you're willing to listen.
Absolutely. So we're going to take this in a slightly different direction. So growing up in the environment you did, there must have been a lot of rules in your head about what's okay and what's not okay, right?
Right.
Okay. So then you're talking about at some point in your life, Old Sac has honorary officials, and one of those is a mayor, and one of those is a gambler, and one of those is probably a sheriff, and one of those is a madam.
Yep.
And what were you?
I was the madam.
So the question is, and obviously this is reenactment, this is whatever. How did that play acting work with you having this other programming in your head? Or were you just going...
I was rebelling. I am a rebellious little person. And my late, wonderful, marvelous husband was a jeweler, and he worked in Old Sac. And they had the honorary officials, which was a fundraising arm. And he started out as the lamplighter and graduated to the gambler, who went by chance, as in you have no chance when you gamble with me. And then he became the sheriff, also known as Sheriff Honey. Sheriff Honey. Mm-hmm. And I was a school marm. Can you imagine that one? And then they asked me to be the madam. Oh, yeah. And I was in training at the chaplaincy at the moment, and the secretary was one of the board members at the church over at Arden, and she goes, Rosie, you've got to do it. You just have to do it. So, okay, I'm an elder in the church. I'm going to chaplaincy school, and I'm going to run the town. So I had my first Floozies, and there you go, were members of the choir. I walked into the choir room, there you go. Walked into the choir room and went, so Sal, how would you like to be a Floozie? And she's the most amazing woman in the world, has the voice of an angel. And Cleveland, not cleavage. And she's beautiful. I have pictures. So we started this together, and you became an official by raising money for improvements in Old Sac. Okay. So you could stuff the ballot boxes. Guess where the ballot boxes were? Most of the time, although they did have real ballot boxes, but they weren't stuffed as well. Anyway, one evening, Sally called me after she'd gotten home. She goes, Rosie, I found $45 all the way stuffed clear down in my cleavage. She had Cleveland. So it was an amazing, fun time. And I was written up in USA Today, went nationwide, Sacramento Bee, and some Midwestern town in Kansas called me at drive time in Kansas to interview the madam. Okay, that's fine. There's a 3-hour time difference. So my phone rings, and I've got this morning voice that sounded like this. And they started asking me questions. They called me back the next year to ask if I was running again. Those were fun times, but Old Town got much less friendly. The gangs moved in, although the police department will tell you there are no gangs in Old Town. Baloney. It just kind of went downhill. And then Rosie decided she needed to come back and find something else to do on a Sunday morning.
Okay, so I have another question, though, is that, we talk about, we joke about the madams, and, there's all of this kind of innuendo around it, but you were telling me something very interesting about the real Floozies in the olden days, of all the things that they did. Could you
Sure.
tell us that?
The madams, or the ladies of the evenings, or the ladies that lived in the brothels, weren't just Floozies. They weren't just sex workers. They sewed buttons on the miners' clothes. They repaired their clothes. They wrote letters home to the miners' families. I taught them how to read and write. They were companions, someone to talk to. It wasn't all about sex. It was about somebody that would sit and listen. Just listen, because they were lonely. They were lost. They had left everything wherever they were to come to California to find gold. Not many of them did. But they did find someone to read, someone to sew their buttons, and someone to listen. That's all they really needed.
So it sounds like your whole life has been about contributing to the well-being of other people, even though you went through your crisis of faith, and it sounds like you never stopped doing that. And so on some level, you lost your faith in God, but you didn't lose your faith in humanity?
Not most of the time. And a lot of times, I mean, you can't help but lose your faith in humanity as well as God when you see some of the awful things that people are doing to each other. I mean, now this world is a terrifying place. But if it wasn't for faith, I would be under the bed with a blanket and the dog. Because this is a terrifying time, in my estimation.
What does faith mean to you? What is faith?
Faith is a feeling of comfort and joy and being able to reach out and share your feelings about life, my feelings about life and happiness, and just kind of hugging the world. Contrary to popular belief, I don't run around hugging everybody, but you can hug them with your heart. I can hug people across the world. I can reach out and hug Reverend Deb on Sunday morning. But what's really most important is to be able to hug myself and to believe in myself. And that's taken me a long, long time.
Why has it taken you all this time? Why is it taking you a long time to be able to hug yourself? What were some of the things that got in your way?
Some of the some of the circumstances from my childhood. I will be 80 next month. And my mama was a Rosie the Riveter. She worked at McClellan Air Force Base. And I had an older sister. She has since passed. And my mama couldn't afford to keep both of us. And so there was a lovely family that lived just around the corner that was my babysitter. And I was a sickly kid. And on top of not being able to afford to take care of me, this family took me in and gave me everything I needed. I wasn't one of those kids that got everything they wanted, but I had everything I needed, and I was loved. They even forced me to take those god-awful piano lessons. I haven't played a note in years. But they took me to church. They taught me to love, and they loved me.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 6 months old.
Okay, so you weren't conscious of being taken away from your family.
I wasn't conscious of being taken away, but the thing of it was, my mama could still come and see me.
So you knew who she was?
I knew my mama. I loved my mama, and I knew my sister, my sister Carol. And then Mama remarried. I called my mother Mommy, and I called the lady that raised me Mama. So Mommy remarried and had a boy and a girl. My sister Stephanie, who passed of colon cancer, and my brother Dennis, who was killed in a car accident when my son was, on my birthday, when my son Stephen was 3 months old. So everything just got out of hand. But the family mama, my mommy and her family have always been noted for being fast women. They were troublemakers, only not bad troublemakers. They were just the Clifford girls. Yes, you have to be careful of those Clifford women, because if you mess with one of them or their baby brother buddy, you had better run, because the Clifford women didn't take anything from anybody. But they were beautiful, wonderful, well-loved women. And they were all married to their separate husbands for over 50 years. They were good women. Now, my grandpa was an Irish fighter. He was a rabble-rouser. He was a boxer. He was a boxing instructor, and the not-too-nice man would beat my grandmother. My Uncle Bud caught him one night when he was stupid drunk and beat some sense into my grandpa. He never touched my grandmother again. Thank you, Uncle Buddy. My Uncle Buddy is 86.
So how did this contribute to your not having that confidence in yourself? Or were those the things that you went back and drew on later as you were coming out of your shell?
I kind of went back and drew on it later because I was kind of like I said, nobody believed this, but I was very shy. I wouldn't say boo to a mouse. And I was incredibly thin, tallest girl in the class, last one picked on all the teams. Oh God, do I have to take Roseanne?
Oh, and you were smart.
I was
How
smart.
dare you be a girl and be smart in your day and age?
My favorite trick was to gaze out the window, and the teacher would say, Roseanne, and ask me a question, and I would tell her the answer. She didn't like that. And I also had very long pigtails. Not that long, but long pigtails. Of course not. I was going to ask you if anybody here remembered inkwells.
Yes.
I had purple ends on my pigtails all the time.
You were only about 70 years ahead of things.
I know. Because I would sit down, and it would be, her pigtails are on my desk. Dunk-a-dunk-a-dunk-a-dunk. I outgrew that. I outgrew the pigtails, but I never outgrew the purple. And thank you, Patty. This is absolutely amazing. Thank you.
So, not being popular in school is not unusual.
No.
I'm trying to think, what are there 6 people in the entire world who are popular in school? I mean, when you really think about it, how many stories of like the people who were not popular in school, I start to think of, who was that really? That just in and of itself takes a while to work out of, or a while to realize that it didn't matter. I remember I was talking to someone a while ago about something about my job, and that, someone else was saying that they had difficulty dealing with something because they didn't want people to be unhappy with them, and they didn't want people to not like them. And I just popped off with, as well, I wasn't popular at school and nobody liked me anyway, so I don't care. And what I was saying is that I don't have a problem saying something that I think someone's going to make, not necessarily like me for, not to be mean or anything, but it's like I can have those conversations because on some level nobody liked me anyway, so who cares, right? You know what I mean? And no, I don't walk around thinking that nobody likes me, but growing up with that attitude actually serves me well now because it helps me stay more in balance. I'm not always worrying about what someone's going to think.
Yep. It took my late husband to bring me out of my shell. I was in a shell. And make me realize that I could do anything I wanted to do, that I mattered. Because when I decided I wanted to go to chaplaincy training, he said, okay, go for it. And in the middle of the night, when the phone would ring, the phone was always on my side of the bed for that reason, he would say, be safe. I'll see you when you get back.
How old were you when you got married?
The first or the second time.
This wonderful husband.
I married my wonderful husband, late husband, Ed, in 1971. And he passed away in 2015. I was not happy.
What did that do to your faith?
It was a double-edged sword. Really? Because I hated to lose him, but I knew he was no longer going to be in pain. He was diagnosed with acute myeloblastic leukemia in August of 2014, and he passed away January 3rd, 2015. I was not happy. I sat there and I was just railed. How dare you do this? How dare you leave me with everything I have to cope with? I walked out of there and went, you've got to stop this right now. It's not his fault. He didn't do it on purpose. But that didn't help. So the faith kind of pulled me back together. There was a purpose. And I've gotten angry at him a couple more times. Like, why weren't you here when the tree fell on the house and almost killed my grandson? Then I thought about it. He didn't abandon me. He was the one that caught the tree just before it crushed him. So he's my angel. He's my pain in the behind. But mostly, he's the inspiration for so much. Because without him standing by me and behind me, I would have never made it through chaplaincy school. And I had to write a dissertation. And I am not good at that. And when I presented it, he sat next to me and put his hand on me because I didn't have to stand up. And on Sunday, I will wear it. He was a jeweler, and he made me a cross out of mined gold. It's about this big. And if you look at it, it's the actual arms of Christ, open-armed, waiting for each of us. And that's what keeps me centered.
So he helped bring your faith back because he had faith in you.
He did. He did. And I often wondered why. But he did.
Did he have a spiritual? Was he spiritual? Did he have a religion? Did he have a belief system?
He was he was a recovering Catholic, and and his religion and church was the beautiful temples of nature.
Well, a lot of people who come out of the Roman Catholic Church actually have a very deep faith. They just leave the confines of the the structured church, and they I've watched a lot of people when someone in their family makes their transition, is that they have such faith in what comes next that they deal with it pretty well. But it sounds to me like he just saw your soul.
I think so. And he still married me.
No, he saw not Rosie. He saw your soul. Of course,
yes.
He married you.
Yes. Yes. There are a lot of stories of I wonder why he didn't divorce me. Like the time we had this beautiful little red MG midget that had bird yuck on it. So his beautiful little wife decided she was going to wash the car for him.
With a Brillo pen?
GI brush and spick and span.
Oops.
Yeah. But he still loved me, and he always called me love. And by the tone of the love, I knew if I was in trouble or not. Oh boy. So when I got the love, I knew it was all over.
So he could say love in all capital letters then.
He could. Whoa. Yes.
So I'm going to really go back to the very beginning. So when you were growing up in that church, did you really have a deep faith, and did you feel a relationship with what we would call the Christ presence? I mean, did you have a relationship with Spirit?
Oh, I think so. Only then
Okay.
it was called, yes, it was Spirit. Right. But then it was God. It was Jesus. You went to choir practice on Thursday night. You went to Wednesday night services. You went to Sunday morning Sunday school. And at that point, they had something they would call junior church, like a children's hour. And I played the piano for that. But that was just part of how you were raised. I just kind of did it blindly because that's the way I was brought up. So you just followed the
So you
principles.
didn't really think about what it felt like inside?
I didn't really think about what it felt like inside. It was habit. And I was also the oldest acolyte at 40.
Okay. So that makes sense as when you started, getting out into the world and seeing what the world really does.
Right.
That you didn't really have that inner feeling to go back to that, that place that we talk about that's not been untouched with by this world.
Right.
That we go to renew ourselves. You didn't have that
No,
in your upbringing, and so sounds like that's what you're gaining now.
exactly.
How is being I'm sorry, but how is being a chaplain and praying with people now? Is that inner feeling growing for you?
It grows every time I pray with somebody. And I'm finding that the brokenness in the people I'm praying with is also part of the brokenness in me. So I can relate. Because this has been said many times, when you're broken, that's how the light gets in.
There is a crack in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know that when I am sitting with someone doing counseling, I'm always kind of fascinated, like they're coming to talk to me about something that is very similar to what's going on in my life right now. And it's like we come together to heal each other. Do you find that there's that mutual healing that happens?
I think so. There definitely is. And it's not just one or two people, it's everybody.
Well, when we sit in a group like this, I mean, there's, I don't know, 15, 16, I don't know how many people in this room, and we're all listening to the same conversation, and there's at least 16 different experiences going on. And yet everyone walks away with something that they can use. At least I hope you can tonight.
I hope so too.
But, right? I mean, so it's not, nothing's wasted.
No, nothing is ever wasted. Spirit doesn't create junk. And spirit holds the universe together. No matter how screwed up it is, Spirit holds the universe together because it could be worse.
Rosie, thank you for joining me tonight. It has been a blast. Thank you for sharing your story. You got pretty personal, and I'm glad you were. Thank you for being comfortable and feeling safe enough to do that. Not everybody would be, and I very much appreciate your coming and spending the evening with us, and I love the hat.
Thank you.
Somebody help her down, please. So next week, we're going to have an unwind, a meditation. Like I said, I've been asked to do, some like guided meditation with silence interspersed to it. And I was trying to think of what would be interesting and different. And it just occurred to me today that we're going to do a meditation based on the prayer of St. Francis. And so what we're going to do is going to take each line, like love and hate. So we'll take that line and we'll have a meditation on getting in touch with those energies, and then we'll have silence, and then we'll do the next line. So we're going to go through the whole prayer that way. I think it's going to be, I haven't written it yet, but I think it's going to be really interesting, and I'm hoping it's going to be a very deep experience, so I invite you all to join us for that. And, of course, we have the opportunity now to support Spiritual Life Center. And is the prayer is the blessing slide there, Andrew? Oh, good. I wasn't sure if I left it in or not. So, we know that supporting SLC it's really important in this day and age, as Rosie was saying, that mainstream churches are really dwindling, and finding the way to keep going and keep people interested and attract young people is really important. But supporting this particular community is one of the ways that we can help spread this consciousness. Because I was talking to my nephew, who's like 40-something years old, and he said, they're not so interested in going to church. He said, but we want experiences. And one of the things that we offer at SLC is experiences. And so this is an important community. So let us bless our offering. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
Thank you, 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 thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Pouring down, your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down.
sky and the earth, woman and man, touch in the center with folded hands. This I know will be, this I know, where the love and the lover rest in each other, beholding the one, holding one another. This I know will be, this I know, forever is how long I'll love you. Forever is how long I love you. Where the clouds have passed and the seas have dried, the tears of Eden will bring new life. This I know will be, this I know, that all shall return again, for love is a river that has no end. This I know will be, this I know, forever is how long I'll love you. Forever is how long I love you. Forever is how long I'll love you. Forever is how long I love you. This I know. This I know.